Welcome to the Radicards podcast at radicards.com. I'm your host, Patrick Greeno, and today I have joining me Brian Hayes of Lingua Sports Cards. And we're going to go through 3 points, 5 minutes each, and let's get right into it here. So, Brian, let's talk about this. When hype happens in the hobby, hype exists because prospectors swarm to certain markets and they buy like worker bees, and then a lot of them will sit on cards for a period of time and then turn them around, hopefully for a profit. That's the hope anyway. Let's talk about this concept of waiting until the hype clears before buying. What do you think are the pros and cons of doing something like this?
Sure. Waiting for the hype to go down is something that I constantly do with my own collection as I am building it. I don't like to get involved in sort of chasing prospect or hype prospects. It's part of it is just that, this hobby is supposed to be fun. And so I try to do the things that are fun for me. And I think in the past, sometimes maybe I'd go after a young player, a prospect. And if it didn't work out, like that player just didn't have the career that many people thought, then I'm sort of left with these cards that I, no longer really want in my collection after a couple of years if that player's been hurt or just hasn't played well, performed up to expectations. I'm sort of left with all these cards that I no longer want, and then I have to, get rid of them, sell them. It's work, and that to me is just not fun. It's not a fun process to go through. And at the end of the day, when I'm building my collection and I'm in this hobby, I'm always making sure that I'm having fun. If I'm not having fun, then I'm doing something wrong. So for me, just waiting, it's more fun. I can still enjoy the player, his career as it takes off, just as a sports fan. I don't necessarily have to have his or her cards of the player. And then after a couple of years, a lot of times the masses, they move on to the next prospect. So even if a player does live up to the expectations, there's always exceptions, but generally speaking, even if a player does live up to expectations, some of that hype has died down. People are on to the next big things. And I just feel more comfortable going after cards then. I might have missed maybe the best time to buy that player, but in the long run, I feel like I win more times than I lose, in the sense that I'm only adding cards of players that I really want to add into my collection. I'm not sort of doing this whole process of sometimes I chose the right prospect and he does well, sometimes not. I feel like just by waiting, more times than not, I'm doing well. And like many other topics in the hobby, I try to take a long-term perspective of how I'm building my collection, and this is just another example of that.
Yeah, I guess that it comes down to what's your goal, what's your intention. Are you planning on getting these cards to resell later for a slow growth, or are you planning on getting these cards because you actually just want the cards because you like the player? And if that's the case, like that's more my style, is the latter.
Agree, and I would also say that I think the longer I've been in the hobby, the period that I'm willing to wait, like, it keeps extending. It used to be like, if I really liked a player, like maybe it's a little bit of FOMO. Like I knew logically I should wait because it oftentimes doesn't work out for a player. But I would really like that player. And so I would wait a couple of years. But over time, I have become more patient of a collector. And a player might be 5 years, 10 years into his career before I add one of his cards to my collection. And I think that's just a change that I've noticed for myself, that I'm really just being very gradual with the additions of new players. And so obviously, a player 5 or 10 years into his career, no longer a prospect, and we more or less kind of know what caliber of player that player is going to be. But also it gives me a sense to understand which sets and cards of that player are also most relevant long term. And sometimes you just don't know right away when a lot of times, there's so many brands these days. There's so many cards to choose from. Even if I wanted to collect the player, I don't even know which card to go get. It's easy to say go after a rookie card, but I like to mix it up. And for that reason, I tend to wait longer than before.
Yeah, man, good thoughts. I'm glad we got a chance to talk about that one. Next question. So Mike Trout has a calf injury he's recovering from, as we've heard. So the question becomes, Mike Trout, best player in baseball right now, is it a good time to buy because he's injured? That's always the thing. Do you buy when it's down and then you sell when it's high? What do you think, Brian? Should we try to scoop up some stuff? His stuff sells pretty good regardless of injury. He's proven himself to be a very dominant player. But if you were to go after a couple cards right now that aren't rookie cards, because those are the obvious ones, which ones would you chase?
So let's see here. I like gold cards. So probably what I would be doing is looking for like Topps Chrome. That's the brand that I like the best as well. So I would probably be looking for Topps Chrome gold refractors of Trout. I think a lot of times those are numbered to 50, although I'm not sure how consistent Topps is with that. That's definitely where I would be going for some of his later year cards. And that's such a tough question to answer on Trout because obviously, like you were saying, he's the best player in baseball. That's pretty clear. But last year with a shortened season because of COVID, and this year with his injuries, and even next year, like there's some talk about potential work stoppage of some sort with baseball because the collective bargaining agreement is coming to an end after this season. Even next year, we're not quite sure what kind of season we're going to have. Hopefully, it's a full season, and Trout can have a full season. I mean, that's what everybody wants and hopes, but there's no guarantees. And so I sort of find myself on the fence with Trout right now. Obviously, he's a legend, Hall of Famer, but I do believe at the same time, I think some collectors have already put him on like baseball's Mount Rushmore, like a top 4 or 5 player of all time. And I think because of that, some of that is sort of baked into the prices of his cards already. But he still has, maybe 10 years left of his career. He still has this whole second half of his career to go. And there's just no guarantee that he's going to continue producing the way that he has. We've seen that time and time again with other players that they slow down in their 30s. Things happen. There's no guarantees in life. And so I would probably, to answer your question, if I was in the market for a Trout card, I would probably just try to find an auction and then just put in an aggressive bid, but nothing over the top right now. And hopefully, I win one or two of those would probably be my strategy right now with Mike Trout. How about you? What would you go after?
As somebody who chases like interesting parallels that don't have relics or autographs on them, I'm right there with you with the like low serial numbered refractor. I tend to go for reds and oranges just because I like even lower print runs on stuff, like even less, common. And I think it's just because it's my draw to like try to get the best stuff I can get. Obviously, super refractors are great, but they're unrealistic most of the time. You just don't see them, and when you do, their asking prices are just through the nose. And so to 5s and 25s and to 50s is more kind of where I go to. So I like that stuff. Doesn't need to be a second year card. No, it can be like last year's card. Redemptions are kind of interesting. Promos are sort of compelling to a degree, I think. If he was in the national convention redemption type stuff over the years, I might go there because they're so far into his career and they're interesting looking cards. Card attraction is important to me too. Like I want to look at the card and like what I'm looking at.
Yeah, those are also really good chases. I like that variety that you so often bring to the table when it comes to cards. Finding some of those different kinds of pieces that maybe not everyone in the mainstream is looking for. I think that's a great way to go after Trout because like his cards they're so expensive and sometimes you can find some of those diamonds in the rough.
Wanted to touch on that, so I'm glad we got to talk about it. Final point here. I follow a lot of notable sales on eBay. I track eBay sales daily just for Frank Thomas stuff, obviously, but like stuff that's not Frank Thomas for my other projects I work on. And then I run my business, of course, through eBay as well. And so I'm seeing a lot of things all the time. So recently, an Albert Pujols card sold from 2002 Topps Chrome. It's the black refractor. 2 bids. So the end price was $24,600. And I don't know how legitimate that sale was, but because that sale existed, now there's a record of it, which creates a perceived market value assumption that this card actually brings, $25K. For a card for $25,000, you could probably get his 2001 Bowman Chrome redemption rookie auto. Significantly more important card to have. And so I don't see stuff like this often, like the second year low parallel black refractor of a key player. Just rare. But when I do, I don't expect this kind of a number because it doesn't have an autograph. It's not a redemption, no jersey. It's not even a rookie card. But granted, the auction it positioned this card as a rookie card. So the kind of dialogue around this is, how does this impact the market for these cards? And how long do you think the market is impacted? How long does it take for the wave to kind of settle to where people forget that this item listed, and somebody will finally list one auction style, and it's like, sells for $1,200 instead of $24,000. So what's on your mind here, Brian, when you look at this auction and you think to yourself, what are the implications of something like this?
Yeah, well, the first thing that it reminds me of is that, this price, this $24,600 final selling price, it seems so outrageous that like it's hardly even believable. But then on the other hand, like I feel like I've been saying that quite a bit over the last year and a half in the card market, and we've seen a lot of legitimate deals go down. And so it's so hard to know if something is 100% legitimate or if there's some, online chicanery going on behind the scenes that, it sort of ends with this final selling price. So it's really tough to know what to make of that. Probably the first thing that's going to happen is that other owners of this card are going to see that sale value, and I would guess that they're going to put their card onto the open market in some form and try to see if they can sell their card for a similar amount.
That's already happening.
Is that already happening?
There's already another example online with a bin asking price of this.
Oh, okay. So
yeah, so it's like, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
You can't really, and asking price is, instead of 24,600, it's 24,500, and it starts as an auction style. Now, I can feel at least partially confident assuming this car is not going to get any bids, even though you're saving $100. So yeah. I don't think, and I know it's a different copy because the serial number is different.
Yep.
So it's not just somebody bought this and then relisted it. There hasn't been enough time between like the purchase of the last sale and getting it to relist it anyway. Still in transit or still in the possession of the seller of the first example. So when I see this, I'm like, oh gosh, this one that's on eBay now, 24,500, has 18 watchers, and in 3 days, on Friday when it ends, are we really to assume it's going to get a bid? I just find it extremely hard to believe that we're going to see any action on this card.
It's so interesting. Your point about this Pujols that did sell being labeled as a rookie card in the listing. I'm wondering if perhaps there was a buyer or a couple of prospective buyers who are new to the hobby. I mean, this is a lot of money to be spending on a card. So if you're brand new and you're spending this amount of money, I would probably question, not doing your research a little bit more. But I wonder if someone legitimately thought that this was a Pujols rookie card numbered out of 50. Maybe someone just made a mistake, but there was a couple of bids. So it's really tough to know. I would say that, I totally agree with you. The next sale of this card, it's not going to go for anywhere near this. It might though,
because this auction started out at 24,500 and two separate bidders.
Yeah.
So this one that's currently listed, it's a separate example.
Yeah.
For all we know, it's going to bring more. I just find it hard to believe that this card sells for like more than twice as much as his 2001 Bowman Chrome Redemption rookie auto, like the card to get. The iconic card of that decade, the one everybody wants.
Yeah, I would say I'm looking at the this 2002 card right now. I like the design of it. It's a beautiful card. It looks yeah. So maybe just someone really wanted it and put in an aggressive bid, and they did what they had to do to bring it home, or maybe they're trying to do some sort of run, complete some sort of rainbow, and needed this card and was willing to do whatever it took. So. People have all different kinds of motivations, both buyers and sellers, and sometimes it just, on the surface, it doesn't make sense, and we just are sort of looking at this from the outside, trying to figure out what's going on. But yeah, I think the real, the second card that's currently listed, if that sells and for what value, like that to me is really what is going to tell us if there's something maybe a little bit longer term lasting with this card. If this is just a one-off. Sometimes that happens, so we will have to see. It'll definitely be interesting to see how this goes.
Truly, I'm thinking like $1,200 to $1,500 on selling raw auction style. But that's just me. Thanks for tuning into the Radicards podcast and Radicards.com. I'm your host, Patrick Reno, and until next time, enjoy collecting.
If you like this content, please subscribe. Thank you. Enjoy collecting.